that the Torah was evil, wicked, really, really bad and corrupt. The Torah leaves no room for doubt. It was a society founded on Hamas, violence, rape, murder, theft. It was a society of deep injustice in which the powerful preyed on the weak and in which the suffering and the oppressed had no hope of recourse or redress for their suffering. It was a society that deserved to be wiped out from upon the face of the earth. But Rabbi Meir says it's not that simple. That's right, but it's not that simple. And this is in Breshit Rabbah Lamed Vav. It starts from a pasuk in Eov, in the speeches of Elihu. Speaking of God, if God is silent, who will condemn him? V'yastir panim, if God hides his face, who will see? Individuals and nations are in the same boat. If God is hidden, then there's nothing to say, and he can't be seen. Darash Rabbi Meir. Meir says, "V'hu yashkit me olamo." If he is silent, it refers to his being silent from the world. I think what this means is he achieves silence from the world. He doesn't hear anything that's going on. He's not bothered by what the human affairs and terrestrial affairs. Yastir panim le'olamo. He achieves silence from the world and he hides his face to the world so that the people in the world can't see God. They cannot see God's face. And so he achieves like bilateral, there's no commerce between God and the world. There's silence on both ends. God sees and hears nothing, and the people see of the world, and the people in the world see and hear nothing of God. And he spells it out. Kedayan shemotchin kila al panav. It's like a judge who they stretch out a curtain on his face. So there is a judge there. There is a justice, but the judge has a curtain before his eyes and can't see a thing, has no idea what's going on in the world. And so it's a very reasonable question to ask if you're one of the people that this judge is supposed to govern. Very reasonable to ask what kind of justice can there possibly be if he is blinded and apparently has no interest in what's going on out in the world. Kach amru dohar mabul. That is what the generation of the flood said. Avim seichelo v'lo. They said he's up there in the heavens and they're the clouds, and he can't see through the clouds. So he has no idea what's going on down here, which means we're on our own. We're on our own. God's not interested. He doesn't care. And look, we know, like we've been around, we've been in the world before. The wicked prosper, they do great. And the people who try to be righteous are just a bunch of suckers. If you want to get by in this world, you've got to lie and steal and cheat and rape. And like just why not? Because no one's judging, no one's looking, and no one cares. And I may as well get ahead. And also, I'm not going to survive because God doesn't help the oppressed either. And there's no justice. And I don't want to be on the bottom of the equation. I may as well try to get on top. And so I'm going to have recourse to whatever forms of violence I need in order to do well, because it's on me, because God has abandoned us and left us alone, and there is no justice, so I may as well try to come out on top. Amrulo, the rabbis, Rabbi Meir's colleagues, representing the consensus, rabbinic consensus, says, Dayecha Meir, say enough. We do not want to any more of your crazy interpretation. We don't want to hear it. It's wrong. It's unacceptable. It's inappropriate. Stop. And it's unclear. They're either saying they could be saying, look, it's right, but we don't want anyone to hear about it. I think they're saying it's wrong. But they could be saying it's wrong because the idea itself is borderline heresy, a kind of agnosticism. That Rabbi Meir seems to be truthfully saying that God had hidden his face from the people, and unclear if it was for a cause, and God was entirely absent. That idea itself may have been upsetting, just on a theological level, on a doctrinal level. And then further, they're saying remember, this is dangerous. Is morally dangerous and corrupt because you are justifying violence and corruption and evil. You're saying that the generation of the flood were right. Right, and like you're undermining the moral fabric of society, and there's people are going to have no reason to be good and to be kind and to be just if your view is correct, and if God really can just be like a judge who spreads out a curtain in front of his face. But Rabbi Meir's view, apparently, presumably Rabbi Meir agrees that the generation of the flood was justly punished. We don't get any indication otherwise. Rabbi Meir's view is precisely that the fact of God's absence is no excuse for our failure to pursue justice. It's true, right? Meir says, and it's vital that we recognize that more often than not, God is silent. We don't hear anything. And for all we know, God isn't watching us. We don't know. We can't tell. It very, very well be he's got a curtain in front of his eyes and he doesn't know what's going on. And that, Rabbi Meir says, is no excuse. We can be good and kind and just even when we don't see the omnipotent police officer up in the sky giving us directions. Even when we don't feel the direct fear of the Almighty Lord, we can be good. We can be kind. We don't need to give in to the pressures of violence and the scheme and logic of power. We can try to make things right for the suffering and the oppressed. We can make it such that the weak are not preyed upon by the powerful, that they're protected from the powerful, and that at the very least, we don't take part in trying to oppress them just because they're weak. We can make it such that the weak are objects of kindness and charity rather than violence and theft. Right? It says we can do that, and we know that we can't do that because we know that we have to. And we know that it doesn't matter if God isn't watching right now. We have no choice. This is our mission. And if we don't try, even when the world sucks, if we don't try to be good and kind, we will be worthy of destruction. The rabbis, they don't see that. They say like, no, if it's right. If God's not around, then maybe we're off the hook. Rabbi says, absolutely not. We have this responsibility no matter what. And I think it is just to spell it out. I think the Rabbi Meir's colleagues, they see the chain of reasoning as we know there's a God, we know God is watching, and therefore we have to be good. Rabbi Meir says, no, I think it's the opposite. Rabbi says most of the time we don't see God around, and the world legitimately seems to suck because God's not helping, for all we can tell. Rabbi Meir says what we do know is that we have to be good. We have to be just, and we have to be kind. And we know that we have to be, and therefore we know that we can be. It's an old Kantian principle. We can be good. And if we can make that real, if we can make the realization that we have to be good and kind and just real, and we can achieve even some measure of goodness and kindness to beat back the logic of power and violence just a little bit and make some real world purchase for justice, kindness, then maybe Rabbi Meir says, we can get a glimpse. We can get a glimpse of the God up behind the clouds. That's how we find out. That's the chain of reasoning. We're good. We commit and we make real our commitment to justice, and then we get a glimpse of the God who seems to be hiding his face. Wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos.